Right now, on to the point. A voter ID measure on the November ballot. Tonight, its main supporter now calling its election rigged.
The ballot title is being manipulated to try to encourage people to vote no.
The war in Iran. Tonight, as President Trump oversees the dignified transfer of 4 service members killed, where funding for the war stands now. Protest marks the 3rd week of Governor Newsom's return to office mandate, the concerns still being raised. And later, we go inside the first of its kind study trying to crack down on marijuana-impaired drivers in the state. This November, California voters will weigh a stricter voter ID measure. Good evening, as always. Thank you so much for joining us on To the Point. I'm Alex Bell. Proposition 39 calls for tougher identification requirements as election integrity remains a hot-button issue. But the measure's top supporter says that the ballot language is not accurate. I do want to bring in ABC 10's Jeannie Nguyen, who's here to break down the concern.
Alex, Republican Assemblymember Carl DeMaio says Prop 39's updated title and summary is not an accurate depiction of its measure. It's something that the state attorney general, Rob Bonta, is responsible for issuing.
The ballot title is being manipulated to try to encourage people to vote no, to scare voters away. They're trying to falsely claim that citizens would be prohibited from voting.
Republican Assemblymember Carl DeMaio is referring to Prop 39, a voter initiative that would require stricter identification when voting. This was the language that was originally included, saying it establishes additional voter identification and citizenship verification requirements. Prop 39's language was changed to now say prohibits citizens from voting unless they present government-issued identification. The change is something DeMaio believes is inaccurate.
It is so illegitimate. It is so corrupt. It is so dishonest what this attorney general has decided to do because he does not support this initiative.
A spokesperson for the attorney general's office says it's not uncommon for the ballot title and summary to change from the circulating version, and that proper discretion was exercised to provide further clarity to voters about Prop 39's purpose for the ballot stage. The AG's office says changes were made on all of the voter proposed ballot initiatives, something Capitol Weekly editor-in-chief Rich Eisen echoes.
There are 9 total voter-approved measures that voters will be addressing in November. All of them had their ballot titles shortened as well. So he would have to make a case that his was singled out for partisan reasons and in a partisan manner.
As far as next steps, DeMaio says he's weighing his options.
We are reviewing all legal options because this is obviously undemocratic, it's unethical, and we believe it's illegal as well. But the problem is that we're up against a time crunch with the filing of the state ballot guide.
And I asked Assemblymember DeMaio what language would he like to see on the ballot. A spokesperson on his team was unable to provide me with that answer, but pointed out that if this passes, the citizenship verification is all done by the government and voters would not be required to show any documentation, Alex.
All right, Jeannie, thank you. New tonight, the House passed the National Defense Authorization Act that authorizes more than $1 trillion in defense funding. The legislation narrowly passed the House 216 to 212. It is the first step toward unlocking more money for the war in Iran. It also includes aid for U.S. farmers and money for state election grants to help promote President Trump's Save America Act, the voter ID bill that the Senate has repeatedly refused to pass. Here was House Speaker Mike Johnson just a couple hours ago.
And we've delivered once again. Americans demand a few things that are common sense. They demand secure elections. They want a strong national defense capable of countering our adversaries. They want a Congress that plays by the same rules that they do. These are not big things to ask.
Speaker Johnson is also referring to an insider trading bill that restricts the ability of members of Congress and their families to buy and sell stocks. It's a bill that many Democrats argue does not go far enough. Meanwhile, it is uncertain how this Defense Act will play out in the Senate. Right now, Congress is in a rush to pass legislation before their summer recess. In the war in Iran tonight, the bodies of 4 Army service members that were killed arrived back in the U.S. for a dignified transfer. And it comes as both the U.S. and Iran are now threatening to expand the war. ABC's Christiane Cordero has the latest from Washington.
Today, one by one, cases draped in the American flag were transferred from a military jet onto American soil. Military personnel escorted the bodies of the 4 fallen service members at Delaware's Dover Air Force Base in order of rank. 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan of Hawaii, 30-year-old Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton of North Carolina, 28-year-old Sergeant Angel Rampersad of New York, and Private Isabella Gonzalez of Texas, just 19 years old. President Trump was among the guests in attendance meeting with the families before the dignified transfer.
They're their children. There's no games, no nothing. That's their child. And all you can do is throw out your heart.
The Pentagon says 3 of the fallen soldiers were killed during Iranian airstrikes at a U.S. base in Jordan. Sergeant Swinton died from injuries he sustained during the controlled detonation of an Iranian drone in Iraq, according to the Pentagon. Their deaths mark at least 18 Americans killed so far in a war that continues to escalate. Trump today in a social media post threatened to bomb one bridge or power plant anytime Iran shoots at a ship in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran responded on state media threatening to retaliate against any such strikes by hitting bridges and other infrastructure in the region that the U.S. relies on.
In addition to the human toll, Defense Secretary Hegseth told senators yesterday that he estimates the war with Iran has cost an estimated $37.5 billion. Christiane Cordero, ABC News, Washington.
Meanwhile, officials tell ABC News President Trump has approved a nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia. It's setting off alarm bells across the Middle East. This is video of past meetings between President Trump and the King of Saudi Arabia. The 30-year agreement would allow Saudi Arabia to enrich nuclear fuel for civilian reactors. In theory, that could at some point lead to the production of nuclear weapons. The deal involves American companies providing technology and expertise to Saudi Arabia's program. California Democratic Congressman John Garamendi is calling this terrible policy.
We should never, ever do this. Why would we ever set up a situation in which there would be the likelihood of nuclear proliferation? We've already got around with an ability to enrich uranium to the point of being able to make a bomb, and we're going to turn that over to Saudi Arabia? No, we're not. This is just terrible, terrible policy. We ought to be going in the other direction.
Israel has long expressed concern over Saudi Arabia accessing nuclear technology. The deal will be reviewed by Congress. Still ahead, 3 weeks since state workers were mandated back into offices. Their concerns over costs and parking tonight. Plus, the first of its kind study how the DMV and CHP are trying to crack down on marijuana impaired drivers in the state.
And temperatures going forward, pretty seasonal. No more humidity either. We are drying out, sunny skies. I've got a full look at the forecast coming up after the break.
But first, in other headlines tonight, the man convicted in the 2023 Davis stabbings was declared legally insane today. On Tuesday, Carlos Dominguez was found guilty of 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. 2 men died and 1 woman was severely hurt in the attacks. Prosecutors are now expected to file a petition to have Dominguez committed to a state hospital. President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores appeared in a federal court today. A judge set jury selection in their case to begin in June next year. Back in January, the U.S. military captured Maduro and his wife in Venezuela. They're accused of being part of a criminal conspiracy to send thousands of tons of cocaine into the United States. And new photos show the extent of a man's injuries after he was almost sucked out of an airplane's window earlier this month. The 61-year-old was flying from Greece to Germany when part of the plane's structure broke, and his wife and other passengers held on to him. His lawyers say he is still recovering from both physical injuries and psychological trauma. Firefights were underway across our region today. The Mooney fire caused evacuations near Smartsville in Nevada County today. Another fire in Slough House spread to 5 acres with some breezy conditions, while a bigger firefight is underway tonight near Dobbins in Yuba County. Evacuation orders are still in effect for the Chute fire, but the good news is that fire is not spreading fast. I do want to get things over to meteorologist Brendan Minchef. Brendan, all this activity pretty normal for this time of year, right?
Yeah, things are just dry. And we have had some wind today, but it has been that Delta breeze. So it's not a really dry wind, but it doesn't really necessarily matter that much whenever you get a fire started and you've got wind pushing it around. It's going to move the fire, whether it's a more humid wind like we had today or a dry wind out of the north. Nonetheless, temperatures well below normal. 87 Sacramento today, 89 89 Stockton, 90 in Modesto, some low 80s in the high country, a far cry from the 100s we saw yesterday. 83 in Sacramento right now, 83 in Stockton, 85 in Manteca, 92 up in Colusa, and some 70s in the high country. Temperatures about 15 degrees cooler than this time yesterday. Of course, a large part of that is thanks to that onshore wind that we've had all day long. Still, right now, 15-mile-per-hour winds out of the Delta, closer to 20 miles per hour in the Delta. Looking towards downtown, 83 degrees, clear skies, 15 degrees cooler than 24 hours ago. And it'll be a pretty quick cool down here. 70s, then 60s. By the time we get towards 10 p.m., we'll start off in the 50s on Thursday morning. A cool start. 58 in Sacramento, 58 in Stockton, 61 in Modesto, 56 in Angels Camp, 48 in South Lake Tahoe. We will, of course, see that humidity come back as it always does overnight, but in a normal manner. It's not so tropical. It's not as warm. For Thursday afternoon, we'll still see a Delta breeze, but not as much humidity in the valley. We're going to be looking at relative humidity values closer to 20%, which is what we typically see. This afternoon, we had relative humidity values of 30 to 40% in the valley. So difference there. 93 in Sacramento tomorrow, 92 Stockton, 94 in Modesto, 80s and 90s in the foothills. High pressure is going to continue to dominate the weather pattern for the foreseeable future. A couple of tropical systems going to get steered off to the west, and that high pressure scoots just close enough to us. It's going to turn off that monsoon moisture for a little bit. So the next 10 days here, seasonal in those mid 90s, then some upper 90s towards the end of the forecast. Plenty of sunshine and no more humidity. We're back to dry heat. Alex.
All right, Brendan, thank you. Right after the break, the return to office mandate and the protest happening downtown today. And we go inside a first-of-a-kind study in nearly 40 years, cracking down on marijuana-impaired driving in California. Now to your state matters. Tonight marks 3 weeks since Governor Gavin Newsom's return to office mandate took effect. Most state workers are back in the office at least 4 days a week, but as ABC 10 political reporter Jenny Hush shows us, it's not without concern.
It's a lot to not only logistically plan for, but financially it's a large strain.
We literally cannot afford the cost it is to return to office.
3 weeks into the return to office mandate, California state employees continue to protest, arguing a one-size-fits-all approach does not work.
They made us believe that telework was the future, so we planned our lives around that.
Crystal Aguilar has been with the state franchise tax board for over a decade. Even in the pre-pandemic days, Aguilar says she only reported to the office 3 days a week. Aguilar says now she has to account for expenses she's never had to consider, almost $1,000 more monthly in gas and childcare costs.
So this is worse for me.
Michelle with the state's Employment Development Department declined to share her last name or show her face. She says she was hired remotely during COVID.
I was told hybrid working is a new way of working and that they don't see us returning to office.
Now Michelle says she has had to rehome her dogs and commutes 48 miles one way. Some of her biggest expenses, parking and gas.
Forced to park at the meters, which can be about $48 a day.
An option for state employees is to park at state parking lots like this one, but even this is competitive, they tell me. It often requires them signing up for an online lottery, which does not guarantee a spot.
Public transportation for some of us is not an option.
According to the California Department of General Services, the state operates 17 parking facilities in Sacramento, a total of 8,582 parking spaces. To get a spot, employees have to sign up for a tenant wait list or randomized online parking lottery system drawings. As of this week, that waitlist for state parking has 6,853 workers on it. And because those spots are yours until you cancel it, some never get off that waitlist. Michelle says she has been on for 7 years. For context, the state says the RTO mandate will affect some 108,000 workers. Meantime, Governor Newsom on Tuesday responded in length to the pushback over his mandate.
Come back to work, re-engage, rediscover, collaborate, coordinate, develop relationships, friendships, fall in love. And all I'm asking for is, you get 3-day weekends. You still do. 4 years ago, that would have been a triumph. Now it's some burden. So respectfully, I have a different point of view.
Jenny Hutt, ABC 10.
With marijuana now legal and far more potent than it was decades ago, the California Department of Motor Vehicles and the California Highway Patrol are taking a fresh look at what impairment really looks like behind the wheel. It's the first major study of its kind in nearly 40 years, and our team was given rare access inside the testing.
From above, it looks like a routine driving course. But this isn't training, it's research.
While alcohol is the most common substance identified in fatalities and serious injury crashes that are associated with impaired driving, cannabis is number 2.
The California Department of Motor Vehicles is studying how cannabis affects driving in real time, something they say hasn't been studied at this level since the early 1980s.
Back in the 70s and 80s, THC levels that users would have were anything from 1% to 4%. Now, in California, we're seeing anything from 20 to 30% or even higher.
And officials say no other study in the country is doing it quite like this, combining real-world driving with advanced vehicle technology. About 300 people are involved. Officials say legalized recreational cannabis is creating new challenges for policing impaired drivers.
The study's goal is really to help better understand how cannabis impacts real-world driving and also test the tools that law enforcement currently has in order to identify those impaired drivers.
So what is it on the road that really degrades when people are too high to drive? And that could be useful for informing law enforcement training.
We went inside the actual study site. People you see here are with the CHP and DMV and are not participants. Cameras weren't permitted during live testing to protect the integrity of the research. Participants are medically screened.
Once that medical exam takes place, they then enter our smoking booth.
Then randomly assigned into one of 3 groups. One group receives active cannabis with THC, a second receives a placebo, and a third receives no cannabis at all. After smoking, some drivers within minutes, others wait up to an hour before getting behind the wheel.
Okay, so this vehicle instrumentation captures drivers' inputs, such as how hard they're pressing the pedals and how they're turning the steering wheel.
While the study involves multiple agencies, the DMV leads the research, design, and analysis. The University of California, San Diego oversees the study's human subjects review, helping ensure participants are protected throughout the research. California Highway Patrol provides trained officers who conduct field sobriety tests. Unlike alcohol, there's no single roadside number that determines cannabis impairment. Officers also rely on behavior, physical signs, and structured field evaluations. CHP says this study is needed now more than ever.
Definitely seeing an increase in cannabis usage in the state of California, obviously due to the passage. Some of the stats that I can definitely cite is in 2025 alone, there was over 8,000 drug evaluations that was completed. Out of that 8,000, over 3,300 had combined alcohol and or cannabis.
We have seen in California a steady increase over the past decade in the number of people who die on our roads due to drug-impaired driving.
Impairment is 100% preventable. 100%.
There is a lot of evidence that cannabis-impaired driving is impaired driving and dangerous. So we can all do better on the road to be safe.
And researchers say a final report is expected within the next year and will go to DMV and CHP leadership as well as state leaders before being shared publicly. All right, still ahead, the Cyclosporiasis outbreak, what new numbers are revealing about the parasitic outbreak, and also how you can stay safe. All right, before we go here, we are continuing to follow that cyclosporiasis outbreak that's been going on for weeks now. The CDC is now tracking at least 11,000 cases in 41 states. We know that more than 300 people have also been hospitalized, ranging in age from 2 years old to 95 years old. While health officials have linked some of these cases to shredded iceberg lettuce served at Taco Bell restaurants in 5 states in the Midwest, they are also looking into other potential sources. We know that Taylor Farms is also pulling lettuce products from 27 different states. We should also note that California is not involved. The California Department of Public Health has told ABC 10 that they are monitoring any cases at outbreak levels here. So, of course, we'll keep you updated. But health officials say that the numbers are expected to rise. They are saying that you can do things at home to keep yourself safe. That includes washing your hands, your produce, and of course, disinfecting your hands and kitchen surfaces as much as possible, of course, to prevent cross-contamination. So just some good things to remember there. As always, thank you so much for watching, for always inviting us into your home. If you missed any stories today, don't forget you can always download our free ABC 10 app to catch up on any news that you might have missed. Have a wonderful night. Stay safe. I'll see you back here tomorrow.